Alright kids and squids, what is going on? It is Hank here from Nintendome, and today I am super excited to offer you all the definitive beginner's guide to Splatoon. So let's get right into it. Welcome to Splatoon, Nintendo's third-person shooter for the Wii U. Sure, you might know of Splatoon due to the popularity of its online 4v4 matches, but my first recommendation for you is actually to play through the entire single-player campaign first. Not only because this is required to unlock certain weapons, but also because it is very helpful to learn the controls. Now, speaking of the controls, let's talk about that for a second. For a shooter, Splatoon is actually pretty unique in the controls department. The most major decision you have to make is whether or not you want to play sticks or gyro. Now, when I say sticks, I mean using the left and right joysticks to control your movement and your aiming. And when I say gyro, I mean using those sticks in tandem with the motion controls to control your movement and your aiming. Now, there are pros and cons to both, and both have definitely been used at the highest level of competitive play. However, I do want to point out that for the most part, people tend to use gyro controls. Now, sticks will definitely feel more familiar and comfortable to those of you that have some prior FPS experience, but I definitely recommend giving gyro controls a shot. It just gives you another form of input. You can do cool things like jump and spin around at the same time, which is very difficult if you're playing with sticks. So yeah, personally I like gyro controls, but which one you choose is ultimately your prerogative. Now, the next thing we want to talk about is picking your sensitivity. So I've noticed that a lot of the more experienced players tend to go at a +5 sensitivity, and while that's good to keep in mind, I definitely would still recommend going into the testing arena yourself and messing around with the sensitivity until you find something that you're comfortable with. I really think it ultimately comes down to player preference. A higher sensitivity does mean that your reaction time will be a bit more fast, but it also means that it's going to be a bit more difficult to keep a steady shot and aim as well. So in terms of the basic controls, of course, ZR shoots the main weapon, R activates the sub-weapon, ZL activates squid form, X jumps, Y resets your camera, and if you want to activate your special, you have to press down on the right control stick. And if you want to super jump or just quickly jump to one of your teammates or the spawn, you just tap the appropriate location on your gamepad. Okay, so now that you've beaten the single player campaign and now that you're fully familiar with the controls, let's go ahead and talk about picking a weapon. So there are 5 main weapon classes in Splatoon. There are shooters, chargers, rollers, sloshers, and splatlings. Each of these weapon classes offer different unique pros and cons, and really I'd recommend going into the testing room yourself to try out all these weapons. You can do it for free in Sheldon's shop by just hitting Y over any weapon. You can just try it out in the testing room for as long as you want. It's also important to note that every weapon is equipped with a sub-weapon and a special weapon. Like I mentioned earlier, to activate the sub-weapon, you only need to hit R. However, if you want to activate the special weapon, you actually need to charge it up first. And the way you charge it up is by spreading ink. So once you spread enough ink to fill up that gauge, you activate your special weapon by pressing down on the right control stick. Alright, so you've mastered the controls, you've picked your main weapon. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty and talk about the online game modes. There are 4 main game modes in Splatoon. So of course, Turf War is the most prolific, and it's what Nintendo calls regular battle. This is the only game mode that is always accessible to you, regardless of the rotation. In Turf War, the primary objective is for you and your team to cover more ink than your opponent's team. This leads to very chaotic gameplay that some people deem a bit uncompetitive, and a lot of Turf War matches are actually going to be determined by the last 30 seconds of the game, but regardless, it's still loads of fun, and it's really the best and only way to dip your toes into online multiplayer. Now, there are also 3 other ranked game modes that you can only access after you have reached level 10, and we'll talk more about leveling later. Now, these 3 ranked game modes are Splat Zones, Rainmaker, and Tower Control. When you play during these ranked game modes in a public lobby, they will actually influence your rank and determine what other players you will get paired up with. It's also very important to keep in mind that there's only one ranked game mode in rotation at a single time, and each rotation will last for 4 hours. It's also important to keep in mind that there are only 2 maps per game mode in every rotation, so that means that every 4 hours, you will get 1 Turf War set with 2 maps, and 1 ranked set with 2 maps as well. So let's talk a little bit more about each individual ranked game mode. Like its name indicates, Splat Zones is really a control the zone game mode. The objective is to control a zone until the timer runs down to 0. Rainmaker is basically a capture the flag game mode where you have to pop and open a Rainmaker and carry it into a designated area of your opponent's base. Tower control is very similar to that, although instead of actually carrying the Rainmaker to your opponent's base, you're riding the tower across a predetermined path. So a bit earlier I mentioned leveling up and rank. Leveling up is very important because it can help you unlock more weapons and gear in these shops. There are also exclusive pieces of gear and weapons that you can unlock by achieving certain milestones. Now, it's very easy to get lost in the rank. A lot of people want to achieve that S+99. Personally, my advice to you is to not worry about it too much. It's really just a grade, and being S+99 does not automatically mean that you're great at Splatoon. Not being S+99 doesn't automatically mean that you're awful at Splatoon, but please don't stress out about it. I've seen too many of my friends lose sleep over their rank in Splatoon, and honestly, it's just not worth it. Alright, so we're almost done with everything. The last thing that I want to talk to you about is gear. You can buy a fresh selection of gear every day in the shops. You can order gear from Inklings in Inkopolis from this mysterious man named Spike, although he will charge you a premium. And while gear is awesome because it allows you to customize your Inkling to look fresh, it actually serves a functional purpose as well. You'll notice that each piece of gear has abilities and sub-abilities. The stars will indicate how many individual sub-abilities you can have on a certain piece of gear. Now, once you reach level 20, you can actually upgrade this using Super Sea Snails. So effectively, every piece of gear can have 3 sub-ability slots if you want. It's also important to keep in mind that main ability slots are locked. Each piece of gear has a set main ability, so you can get any sub-ability on any piece of gear, although brands can impact these sub-ability roles. So if you want to see me do an entirely different video on abilities, definitely let me know down in the comment section below. It's also important to note that if you are not happy with your sub-ability roles, Spike will actually re-roll them for you for either 1 Super Sea Snail or 30,000 coins. But again, you have to be at least level 20 before Spike offers this. If this video helped you out, definitely feel free to share this video with some of your friends as well. Maybe they're not that familiar with the game. I really think there's some useful information in here for everyone. And yeah, guys, as always, likes are appreciated. Subscribe for more fresh Splatoon and Nintendo videos in the future. And I guess that's it. Thank you so much for watching.